My grandma just passed away and I found her old journals. My grandma passed away last month. I inherited her home. It's been in the family for years, but my parents have their own home a bit further away now, so after my Grammy passed it was all left to me. My sister and I were going through her belongings the other day and we discovered a small wooden chest hidden in the attic. It was old, covered in dust, and had a rusty lock that had long since ceased to function. Inside, we found stacks of leather-bound journals, each meticulously dated and filled with my grandmother's elegant handwriting. The journals spanned decades, from 1960 to the turn of the century. Grandma was always a storyteller, weaving tales of our family's deep roots in the remote corners of Appalachia, but she never mentioned these journals. As I started reading, the stories unfolded with an eerie familiarity, painting a chilling picture of our family's history. With each entry, the sense of foreboding grew stronger, and I realized these weren't just stories, they were warnings. And now, the past seems to be clawing its way into my present. Journal entry, August 15, 1960. We've settled in Abingdon, a remote, isolated part of Appalachia. The land here feels ancient, steeped in untold stories and whispers of the past. The locals are a superstitious lot, with warnings about the woods that surround our new home. They say never to whistle after dark, as it invites the attention of things best left undisturbed. Last night, as the sun set behind the mountains, I felt a strange heaviness in the air, almost as if the mountains themselves were watching us. The wind carried strange, faint whispers that seemed to beckon me into the forest. I wonder if moving here was a mistake. Journal entry, October 2, 1961. Something strange happened tonight. As dusk fell, I heard a distant, haunting whistle from the direction of the woods. It sent a shiver down my spine, and I hurried inside, bolting the door behind me. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked through the window. At the edge of the forest, I saw a figure. At first, it looked like a man, but its limbs were unnaturally long, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. It stood there, motionless, for what felt like hours before vanishing into the shadows. I didn't sleep at all that night, haunted by the image of those glowing eyes. Later, as the night grew deeper, the sounds of the forest became unnaturally silent, and I heard the creak of the floorboards outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, straining to hear any movement, but there was nothing. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread seeped into my bones. I knew something was out there, something that didn't belong. Journal entry, November 13, 1965. The air in Abingdon has grown thick with fear. People have been disappearing without a trace. Last night, I was jolted awake by the sound of someone whistling outside my window. My heart raced as I peeked through the curtains. There, under the pale moonlight, stood a tall figure. Its eyes were like twin flames, burning into my soul. It raised a hand and beckoned, its long fingers curling in a gesture that chilled me to the bone. I stayed awake until the first light of dawn, too terrified to move or make a sound. As the hours dragged on, I heard the sound of soft footsteps circling the house. The floorboards creaked, and the walls seemed to groan under the weight of an unseen presence. I could feel it watching me, a cold, malevolent gaze that pierced through the walls. When dawn finally broke, the oppressive feeling lifted, but the terror lingered. Journal entry, February 9, 1970. Uncle Bill is gone. He left the house in the dead of night, muttering that he heard Ma's voice calling to him from the woods. We tried to stop him, but he was convinced it was her, despite Ma being dead for 5 years. The search party found his hat the next day, torn and bloodied, but there was no sign of Uncle Bill. The locals whisper about the things that mimic human voices to lure their prey. I can't shake the feeling that something malevolent is watching us, waiting for the right moment to strike. The night he disappeared, the air was thick with fog, and the trees seemed to close in around the house. Shadows danced at the edge of the forest, and I heard faint whispers carried on the wind. They sounded like Ma, but distorted, wrong. As the fog crept closer, the whispers grew louder, and I could feel a presence pressing in on all sides. When Uncle Bill stepped into the mist, it swallowed him whole, and the whispers stopped. Journal entry, September 21, 1980. I found strange tracks behind the house today. They looked like hoof prints, but far larger and deeper than any animal native to these parts. The old-timers say it's the devil himself, roaming the hills and looking for souls to claim. They speak of an ancient curse, a pact made by our ancestors with dark forces to protect the land. I used to think these were just old wives' tales, but now I'm not so sure. The air is thick with a sense of foreboding, and I can't shake the feeling that something is watching us from the shadows. As I followed the tracks, I noticed the forest growing unnaturally silent. The usual sounds of wildlife were absent, replaced by a heavy, oppressive stillness. The tracks led to a clearing where the ground was scorched, as if burned by an intense heat. In the center of the clearing, I saw a figure, tall and gaunt, with eyes that glowed like embers. It turned its gaze towards me, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I fled back to the house, but I could feel its presence following me, a dark shadow that clung to my every step. Journal entry, May 12, 1995. I've seen it with my own eyes, the creature whatever it is. I was out checking the traps when I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if I was being watched. I turned and saw a creature emerging from the woods. It shifted forms, part human, part beast, its eyes burning with an unnatural light. It let out a low growl, a sound that seemed to vibrate through my very bones. I ran, stumbling and tripping in my haste, but I never looked back. Even now, I can feel its eyes on me, a malevolent presence that haunts my every step. The night after my encounter, I heard scratching at my window. I dared not look, but the sound was persistent, a slow, deliberate scraping that set my nerves on edge. I covered my ears, but the noise only grew louder, more insistent. Finally, I mustered the courage to peek through the curtains. There it was, the skinwalker, its face pressed against the glass, eyes glowing with an otherworldly hunger. I screamed, and it vanished, but I knew it would be back. Journal entry, December 31, 1999. Tonight, there's an electricity in the air, as if something monumental is about to happen. The wind carries strange whispers, and I hear the faintest, most unsettling sound of whistling. They say the new millennium will bring change, but I fear it's bringing something else. Something ancient, something hungry. As midnight approaches, the feeling of dread grows stronger. The shadows seem to move on their own, and I swear I saw a pair of glowing eyes staring at me from the edge of the forest. I can't shake the feeling that the past is catching up with us, and whatever it is, it's coming for me. As the clock struck midnight, the house was plunged into darkness. The wind howled, and the walls groaned as if under immense pressure. I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the house. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath in the dim light. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the shadows seemed to writhe and twist. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, and I turned to see a face, pale and gaunt, with eyes that glowed like coals. It whispered my name, and I felt my blood run cold. And that was the end of the entries. As I close the last journal, a faint whistle drifts through the air, sending a chill down my spine. My hands tremble as I lock the doors and draw the curtains. The tales of Abingdon aren't just stories, they're a legacy of fear and darkness passed down through the generations. I realize now that by reading these journals, I've awakened something that should have remained buried. For the longest time I believed in this, but only since reading the journals have these instances started happening firsthand to me. The nights are long and sleepless. I hear that haunting whistle every night, growing closer with each passing hour. Shadows dance just beyond the tree line, and the air is thick with the weight of untold secrets. I know I have to leave this place, but deep down, I fear that some things you can't run from. The past has a way of catching up, especially in Abingdon. I love this family home, but I'm afraid I can't stay here much longer.